Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Thursday morning, January 26th. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. Chat room's open. I don't have any links in there. I'm just going to talk today and just chat a little bit about what I've been thinking about lately, and sort of did that yesterday as well. And, yeah, thanks, everybody, for being here. I appreciate it. I've almost done 900 shows, and I have a lot of people who tune in and don't even know who most of you are. I do appreciate everybody's taking the time to listen to my shows for over the last couple of years, and I just had no idea when I first started out how long I'd be doing these shows, but this show, especially in the morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to Another, has been very helpful for me. Hopefully it's been helpful for somebody else, just to see that, you know, we can do this as survivors, right? We can do this. We don't have to be destroyed by our past. We don't have to be destroyed by what we've been through in our childhoods or even in our adult lives. But we do have to make sure that we get the help that we need, and whatever it is, like whether it's counseling, therapy, group support, self-help, right? Whatever it is, but just make sure that we do get the help that we need. Because it's really unfortunate to see people ruin their lives over something that really wasn't even their fault. Something that wasn't started by them, but was put on them by other people, and then they take that and ruin their lives with it. And that's what I was doing. I was always headed on the road toward that until 5 years ago, when I decided that I needed to change everything, the way that I thought, my thought processes, my belief systems, my emotional state, my as much of the physical stuff as I could change. You know what I mean? Mostly it was all internal stuff, emotional wounding and stuff. So, until I actually started working on that, it was never going to change. I was always going to be feeling the same way. I was always going to be having the same pity parties. I was always going to be feeling the same anger, the same rage about, from what happened to me as a child, right? And I thought, I really have to change this. I don't want to continue on this path. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for my healing journey, was to actually just realize that I didn't want to stay the same. I was like, okay, I don't want to stay the same. How am I going to change this, And how am I going to, work through some of these behavioral issues that I had picked up along the way that weren't really, and we can say, okay, they weren't our fault, that's for sure. But as adults, we have to, if we really want to have a different life, growing up, having already grown up in an abusive home or whatever, or been abused in some way, and then, and then to sit there and not want to change and not want to heal, because we can't go back and undo what happened to us. Absolutely no possible way. It's been done. I'm a realist. I live in reality. And so, I can't go back and change my past, right? So I realized, 5 years ago, that I needed to change the way that I felt. And I couldn't change anything that happened to me, or change the past, or what people had done to me, or my relationship with these people. There was no way to change that. And so I needed to learn how to change myself, so that I could be okay with it, so that I could be okay with myself. And so I did, a whole lot of introspection and looking in, and that's what this last 2 years have been about. The One Child Abuse Survivor to Another was just really allowing myself to go where I really didn't want to go, which was to go inside and really, search out what the real problems were, and using whatever self-help stuff I could get my hands on. And a big part of my journey, really a big part of my healing journey, I gotta give Gypsy Witch Kate Mitchell a lot of credit for. Like, she's been here for me every day, pretty well through the whole healing journey, but not just been here. She lives in Australia, and she's listened to me hour after hour after hour, and talked with me hour after hour after hour on the telephone, to be that support, and really to validate what I went through, So she's listened to the worst of the stuff, and been there for me on this journey. And I, for that, I'm very thankful, and there's really no way I can ever repay that except for just to say thanks and much appreciated. You know what I mean? I haven't really been on my own completely doing this. There's been people in my life, a lot of people have been very helpful, and been here through the journey with me. Chris and Princess Kaylin, a whole bunch of people that have just been here with me. Elizabeth Crowley, and people who have just been here with me this whole time. And whether they're here listening to the show, they're here for me after the show. So it's been I haven't really been on my own completely doing this work. And a big part of the reason I think that I was able to move quickly through the last part of my healing journey, which was the horrific stuff about the child sexual abuse and the incest and whatnot that I suffered as a child, was mainly due to a program called Forget Talking Therapy by Beverly Searle out of Australia. And she's not really saying, okay, talking therapy is actually no good. She's just saying that's part of it. But there's another part of it that needs to be done, and that's the limbic system of the brain, which is all pictures, no vocabulary. And so her program, like whether it would work for anybody else, I don't know. All I know is it helped me out a lot. Actually, it kind of made the difference really between where I was 7-8 months ago to where I am today, which is I feel like I've done it. You know what I mean? I've walked this walk. I think I will always grow stronger. I think that I'll always have, as survivors of abuse, I think we're always going to have times when we feel strong, and feel well and whole and feel good. And then I think we're always going to have times when we feel down. I think that's just life. There's no way, there's no utopia. That's a pretend world. Living in a pretend world where people want to feel good, so they just make that their idol. It's like okay, I just want to feel good all the time, so that's what I'm going to seek and pursue. And that's not reality. That's not life here on this planet. That's why we have nerve endings, because life's painful. We either feel good or we feel bad. We feel pain, we feel comfort, we just feel it all. And so I don't believe there's any such thing as this fake pretend world of just being happy all the time. I think that's a form of denial. The issue is that I in this healing journey that over the last couple of years, what I've been able to do is find a lot of stability within myself by doing the work. And when I first started these shows here in the morning, I had already been doing a whole lot of work before I started the show, but I didn't do the speaking part of it. I was doing the other stuff like self-affirmations, like for instance, self-nurturing. I did a lot of self-nurturing before I started this program. I didn't even realize I was going to do One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. Actually, when I came on Blog Talk Radio, it was to talk about child abuse prevention. But I realized that it was really helping me with my own healing journey, and I thought, okay, maybe this will help somebody else. Who's been there, who knows what it's like to be a child who's suffering and doesn't get any help, and then even if you do get help, you still have these issues later on in life as an adult to deal with, and many times these issues don't come out until you're in your 30s, 40s, which is kind of bizarre, but they've done studies on it and found out that that's actually the case. It's very bizarre. You can go through your 20s almost in a sense of, I can take on the world, I'm tough, I can roll with the punches, even if you weren't in denial. I wasn't in denial, but I just felt like I was just a tough person. I could take it, whatever, bring it on. I had enough resilience or whatever, I don't know, or was just busy and occupied enough that I didn't face what I needed to face, and that was the emptiness that was inside of me from what I missed out on in my childhood, which was love and nurturing and care and just building up these very important parts of a child's psyche. They just were missing. So manipulation really was what my whole childhood was about, abuse and manipulation. So I had to go back and really take a good look at this stuff, because I knew that it was going to kill me. I was either going to kill myself or it was just going to kill me. If I needed to do the work, and I thought, okay, well, here we go. I'm just going to start doing this and start someplace, and I realized that I needed a whole lot of I needed to learn how to love myself, and so I had already been working on that before I started doing this show. But as I was going through, I started to realize I had never really grieved any of this stuff properly. I never allowed myself to accept or acknowledge the abuse, even though I knew what had happened to me. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't want to grieve it or mourn it properly, because then I would have to look at it. And I didn't want to look at it, back in my own mental picture of what had happened to me. So I was already having flashbacks and stuff. So I started to do a whole lot of work with the ASCA, Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, the Survivor to Thriver Manual. That was very helpful. Helped me out just to read through there and see what they had to say. I started to then understand why I was behaving the way I was and why I was doing what I was doing. Then I took a look at a lot of information off of the Child Abuse Survivor Monument's website, and that's a great website. There's all kinds of awesome information on there. There's coping lists and information about why adult survivors do what they do, and so that for people like myself, so I could see why I was doing what I was doing, why some of my behaviors were the way they were, which started to give me a big understanding of what had happened to me. I didn't know very much about codependency. I didn't know very much about these abusive these things that many people will take on because of abuse, boundary issues, all kinds of stuff like that. So as I started to study it out, I started to realize, like, wow, this is exactly the way I behave, and I could see that why it doesn't work in my adult life. It may have worked like as a coping mechanism for me as a child, to survive the abuse and to get through what I needed to get through, but it doesn't work for me now as an adult. And I thought, okay, I can change that. I can not do that or change that, to a healthier coping mechanism. I don't have to do that. So this is where, that really showed me a lot. But I had to put the time in, and I had to do, and I think that's just the case with all of this stuff, especially anything we try to do for self-development or healing or any kind of stuff that we're working through. It is work. It's like homework. It's like having a teacher assign a bunch of reading to you, and you got to do it. It's like I thought, well, if I want to get better, it's like anything. If we want to lose weight, well, we got to watch our calories, and we got to exercise, and we got to take care of ourselves. You can't do it by sitting in front of the TV stuffing marshmallows down your face. It's not going to happen. I need to take off some weight, you know what I mean? And I'm very much one of these people that figures, well, I'm just glad to be getting around, you know what I mean, in my physical condition that I'm in. But I could do better. And so, this is the issue. I thought, well, okay, if I really want to feel better about myself and about my situation, then I need to do something about it. So it was really all going to be up to me, and I knew that. And I think that's where a lot of people feel like counselors and therapists will be able to save them and to help them. Well, they can only help them if the counselee is willing to help themselves. And my mother was totally resistant to any kind of help. Like, my mother was a prime example of what not to do. Right? She just was so bent on making everybody pay for the fact that she was abused as a child and that she was abused as a wife. And my mother made everybody pay for it, including her children, and would not get help. So I had a lot of good examples in front of me of what not to do. And so when it came time 5 years ago to make up my decision to actually allow myself to get help, whether it be my own self-help or reaching out to a counselor or a therapist or whatever, I thought, if I can't do this self-help, then I'm going to make a commitment to myself that I'll get some professional help, because it has to be worth it. You know what I mean? Like, my life has to mean something. It has to mean that much. And it does. It's absolutely ridiculous for people to think that they should suffer on for the rest of their life. My mother, some people called her a martyr, like some people who knew her and some old family members used to say stuff like, well, she's really kind of like a martyr. She's a narcissist. But she was also like a martyr, She just died, and, everybody was supposed to just feel sad, And the issue is that, of course we felt sad that my mother died. I mean, we all love my mother. I don't think there was anybody in my family except for my dad who did not love my mother. I mean, all her children loved her. Her sisters loved her. My mom used to save her sisters from my grandmother, who used to beat on all the children. So my mother was like the one who would take the beatings for the family, right? And so my mother was abused, you know what I mean? So she just made everybody pay for that. And I thought, I do not want to do that. You know, it's really not the world's fault today that I was abused as a child. And it's really not anybody in my own personal life today, because I kicked out my abuser family, that's responsible for that, you know, and that should have to pay the price for that. And I want to have a good life, and I just think it's ridiculous, you know, why I can't do it, why I can't have a good life like everybody else, why I can't pursue having a healthy life, you know, a decent life like everybody else. Why do I have to kill myself? Why do I have to be in a pity party all the time? Why do I have to be down and depressed all the time, moody and angry just to show that I was abused? You know, it's like, I think it's just because part of me, and I think the reason why a lot of people do this stuff is because part of us just really needs validation. Because if you've never had any validation in your life and nobody's actually sat back and said, oh, that's horrible, you know, what you went through was just not right, and you didn't deserve to be treated that way, that's horrible, and a person gets the opportunity to talk to somebody about their past, somebody who genuinely cares, I mean, you know, or who's going to be there for you to talk through this stuff, right, and offer some validation, you know, because so many times abusers don't get any validation. And so what happens is it sits around, it spins around and twirls around in your mind over and over and over again, just because it can't go anywhere until you let it go. You know what I mean? Until you actually put it out there. It just stays stuck inside. And like that's a horrible situation. I mean, I had told people about my past, but I had never really gone into any detail. And I mean, you know, it was just too ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, what are you supposed to say? You know, somebody says, oh, so you had a terrible childhood too or something, you know. They don't, I really felt that by telling them I had been raped and sexually used and beaten and bashed in the head by my mother, and raped by my brother, that they didn't, there was a bit much for them. So I used to talk a little bit about like the dysfunction within the family, my parents trying to kill each other, stuff like this. Never got into the details. I never really talked to anybody too much about the heavy-duty stuff, except for when I was young. My teenage friends and we all knew where we were coming from, so we would all talk about it. But as an adult, you know, I didn't have anybody to talk to. I think it's very important to get some help, you know. Like, find somebody who you can just talk to, who's going to be there for you, who's trustworthy, and learn, you know, how to get through this stuff, you know what I mean? Like, find out what's going to work for you best, you know what I mean? Like, for me, I found self-help to be the only way I was going to do it, unless it was just proven to me that I couldn't do it self-help. You know, it's just, if it wasn't working and I wasn't getting anywhere and I wasn't healing, and I couldn't measure any kind of, you know, progression through it, then I was going to allow myself to get professional help. Right? But I was able to see that after, you know, I would just do these little checks, you know, 3-4 months, 6 months, whatever, and say, wow, I am feeling better about that. I'm feeling pretty good, you know. And then I would tackle something else, you know. And in doing that, it really did help me to go through the whole thing that I needed to go through. And I was having a real hard time. I was just stuck with a lot of these inner children that were really these points where I was wounded as a child, obviously the stuff that was the most damaging, just stuck in that, you know, and realized that I needed to go back in and save myself from those points, because my little inner children were still wounded. That was those parts of myself from so long ago. As a child, children can't make sense of this stuff. They don't understand why somebody's hurting them. They don't understand why somebody they love is hurting them, you know. Children can't understand that. They might get it on one level, but they don't really get, you know, how can you understand that at the age of like 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old? Even as a teenager, I couldn't understand why my parents were the way they were. You know, I just thought they were insane. And they really were. They were mentally ill. But I mean, I was just like, you people are insane, absolutely insane. You know, and I started doing drugs and thought, well, you know, I'll just join them. And so, you know, it's just a ridiculous situation. So I had to go back in and to all those points and actually rescue myself. And that's the work that I do with John Bradshaw's books, Healing the Shame That Binds You, and also the Inner Child workbook that he has, John Bradshaw. I work through 2 of those workbooks pretty closely, and then also did some work with Robert Burney's Codependency, the Dance of Wounded Souls, and that was very helpful. So the combination of that stuff really helped me out. And then the final stuff was going through the work that Beverly Searle put out, Forget Talking Therapy. Excuse me. And that was to help. That was to really go back in and rescue these inner children. Even though I had done some with John Bradshaw, I went ahead and did some more with Beverly Searle's program and set up a safe place for these wounded children that were me from so long ago. And what it did for me was change in my mind's eye, like in my memory, in my limbic system in the brain where there's no vocabulary. It's all pictures. It set up a place for me to feel safe. So because I had never felt safe as a child, never ever felt safe because I wasn't safe. I was being abused. It was a horrible situation, and everybody was laughing. They thought it was funny. There were so many people laughing at the fact that I was being abused, and that was hurtful, absolutely hurtful. There was older family members, older siblings that were laughing because I was being abused, and that's the stuff. That's the hard stuff. They didn't come to my aid. They didn't come to my support. They actually laughed, and they thought it was funny. The treatment that I was receiving from my mother, from my dad, they thought that was great. That's hard to deal with. It's extremely hard for the ego, because myself at that age, I needed somebody to stand up for me. I needed somebody to say, you know what, that's not right. You're a good girl. You don't deserve to be treated like that. And all I got was laughed at. So I was beaten and laughed at. I mean, that's horrible. I was raped and laughed at. It's not right, but what can I do? I can't go back and change that. So these little wounded inner children of mine were raging. I mean, I'm talking raging. They wanted to kill themselves. They wanted to kill somebody else. They just wanted to just go out in a blast of destruction. And that was part of myself, right? These are parts of myself that I really needed to get in touch with. And, it never should have happened. None of that stuff ever should have happened. And until we're ready to face it, until we're ready to do something with it, we're just going to continue to sit in that pity party, which is sad to say, but it's true. And what a waste of a life. My mother didn't deal with any of her stuff and sat in a pity party her whole life and ruined her life. And she was a very interesting woman. She was actually really very talented. And actually, when she was nice, she was really nice. My mother was very nice to the neighbors, so I got to see her be nice to people. She wasn't nice to her children or her family, but she was very nice to the neighbors. So when I was out with her at the neighbors, I got to see a different mom. So I got to see another side of her that I wouldn't have seen in the house. And so, I knew that she had the potential to be a really beautiful person, a beautiful mother, and a beautiful wife, and a beautiful woman. And then when she would get back home, it would all change. And she would go back into the role of victim and abuser, right? And so it was a really hard situation, but I knew that she was this beautiful person inside somewhere in there. But she would never do anything about it, because she was stuck in this stupid role of victim mentality. And I thought, man, I do not want to do that. Like that's the last thing I want to do, is spend the rest of my days on this earth being a victim and running around going, woe was me, poor me, I was abused. As much as it does count and it does matter, it does count and it does matter. And that's what I said a long time ago on these shows, like 2 years ago, when I started doing these shows, and then throughout pretty well every day, or at least once a week, saying that we do count and we do matter and our story does matter. But the only thing that's going to be good that ever comes from it is if we survive. And that doesn't mean pity party after pity party after pity party. Like, that means actually getting better. That means allowing ourselves to get help. That means allowing ourselves to help other people. That means allowing ourselves to have a decent life. That's the only way that anything good comes out of this. Because nothing good comes out of abuse. Unless we allow it to. And that's the hard part. Because a part of me wants the world to see, wow, look how screwed up I am, because look what they did to me. The other part of me says, you know what, though, I'm not screwed up. I'm actually doing very well. And so I don't need to be in that place anymore. And I think that's where, that's where I'm at today, is stepping over the line from being once wounded, just drawing an imaginary line in the carpet here in my living room, and just saying, okay, I was wounded, I was abused, I was mistreated, I was raped and beaten and everything else. I was cursed at, treated horribly. I was abused. I was a victim, and I was wounded. And take a step over the line and say, I am no longer those things. I'm safe. I'm healthy. I'm somewhat healthy. I'm healed. I feel good. I can now go on to have something good in my life, joy and peace and happiness. I don't have to stay in that wounded state. I don't have to stay in that victim mentality. And I think for survivors, that's a hard thing for people to do, because I've been doing it for more than half my life, because I was abused as a child, obviously, right? So I carried that on all the way to my 40s. Actually, 41 to be exact. So 41. So now I'm going to be 40. Well, it's 5 years later. So now I'm 46, right? So now I'm only 6 years into my healing journey, and I had 41 years of being a victim. So it's part of it, that's why it's hard for survivors, to say, once they get to that point where they feel like, wow, I feel good, I feel really pretty good. It's hard to allow ourselves to step over that line and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm no longer there anymore. I'm over here now. I feel good. I am happy. Like I'm truly need to be happy to be here, and to appreciate what I have. And in order to do that, I can't be a wounded victim anymore. So that's the whole issue. It comes down to a decision that we have to make. And a lot of people think it's going to be some magical thing, or I think some people think there's just going to be like fairy dust in the air. It's like that's not realistic. Realistically, I just need to make a decision on which side of the fence I'm going to ride on for the rest of my life. It's like, am I going to ride on the pity party side, and am I just going to stay a victim all my life and just be feeling sorry for myself? Because I have every right to do that. That's the issue. People would say, oh, well, you just shouldn't be doing that. There's too many people out there that don't know how to deal with or even understand what people who have been abused are going through. So don't listen to that BS garbage, right? I mean, we do have a right to stay in that if we so choose. My mother did. The issue is that she ruined her whole life. She never ever had a good time. She never enjoyed anything and was just miserable her whole life, and then ended up saying she hated her kids, hated her children. We didn't even bring her any joy. Well, obviously, and then she hated me. It's like, that's really sad. That's pathetic. You know what I mean? So she had nothing to live for. And for me, like, I've got everything to live for. So today I make a choice. I make a decision to step over the line and allow myself to feel healing, to feel wholeness, to feel good, and to never forget. Like, I will never forget my past, but I'm not going to allow my past to run my life anymore. And so today I make a conscious decision to do that. So I'll be back, and I'll be back around, and I'll be doing more shows, and tomorrow night I'll be back on child abuse prevention. It's up to us around 10 o'clock in the evening, and on the weekend and whatnot. And next week I'll be back with a new show. I'm going to actually change this show to the evenings, and hopefully that'll allow more people to phone in if they want to and talk and just, get some, tell their story and feel some validation in that, you know what I mean? Because I've been doing the show in the mornings before I go to work for 2 years, but I'm actually going to change that over next week. So taking care of yourselves, whatever you do, don't ever give up. It's not an option. Just don't make it an option. It just can't be an option. Never give up. Keep looking for that hope where you can find it. Keep looking for that help where you can find it. Keep reaching out. Taking care of yourselves, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.